Well, Christine, thank you for setting this up. Okay, so I'm State Representative Jesse Young. I've been serving you for about 9 years in Olympia in the 26th district, which is the north end of the district, is just a little bit south of here. It goes basically from Kitsap Way all the way down to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It covers the Kitsap Airport now, covers all the Key Peninsula. So you got Gig Harbor, Port Orchard, Bremerton. That's the district. Let's see, I am a software engineer in my day job. Many of you probably know that the state legislature is a part-time career. And so I have 6 kids. I've been married to my wife Jenny for just over 20 years. And let's see, the 6 kids range from 19 now to 3. My youngest just had to turn 3 this week. So my oldest is in college he stopped by for a little bit, but I'll let the truck pass so you guys can hear. So this race for the 26th district is the most important Senate race in the state. In the 26th district, it's probably the most 50-50 district in the state, and I'm probably the most conservative or recognized conservative Christian pro-life candidate on the west coast of the United States, and I'm kind of considered a blight to Seattle because I'm the closest such conservative to Seattle in the state, and they don't really tolerate me. Since I've been in office in 2014, I have the dubious honor of having the most amount of money spent against me in the state of Washington. So they really come hard, they come fast. And so 4 years ago, we lost the Senate seat and it flipped to the Democrat by 104 votes. And since then, I've had to watch Senator Randall effectively live in Seattle and vote basically Seattle values into our district. Seattle values that include defunding our police, 68 tax increases in a row. If you didn't know, her last coup de grace was a year and a half ago, was to vote in a 50-cent gas tax increase that she conveniently scheduled with the Democrat Party to strike at the end of January next year. So do it a year early, strike it right after the election so you don't know it's coming. And the Democrats have gotten very savvy in this state with regard to their tax policy. In addition to that, we've seen everything from carbon tax, property tax increases, a capital gains, an income tax that the Supreme Court, or excuse me, an appellate court just struck down again. The same tax that's been voted down by the courts 16 times in state history, twice at the Supreme Court. Everything is basically, we need more money, we need more money, we need more money, and there's no accountability for how that money is spent. If you didn't know, in my time as a representative, even with those conservative credentials, I actually statistically have the most bipartisan voting record in the state, statistically. There's an independent observer that keeps tabs of legislative scorecards. It's called WashingtonVotes.org, and they have an option in there that you can go and you can select a legislator. You can go back 2 decades if you want. You can select a session for how they voted. You can select their entire career, and one of the options you can select is how many times they vote against the majority of their own party. And if you select that option, you will see that I have about an 85% party line vote, which means about 14 to 15% of the time I vote with the other party. I do that on homelessness issues. If you don't know my backstory, I grew up in Tacoma homeless. In 1995, the Tacoma News Tribune did an article about me. They called me the next Rudy. I was homeless my senior year in high school, was valedictorian, and was accepted to the University of Notre Dame. And I was also named a Johnson & Johnson National Science Award winner, and was also named by the legislature back then a Washington State Scholar. I don't know why the Lord chose to bless me, but for a bunch of providence and a counselor at my high school that chose to take a focus on me. All I cared about at the time was getting my family back together. I was couch surfing, my brother was couch surfing. We had been basically thrown out and evicted from a place, and my mom was trying to find a place. We ended up getting back together, and I remember I spent the most amount of my time senior year. My brother and I slept in a camper that was tied to the back of a truck in someone's backyard for the majority of my senior year. All I cared about was going after school. I either did football, or I was captain of the football team, captain of the track team. And after I was done with those school commitments, I worked at a retirement center, trying to save up first and last month's rent so that we could get our family back together. We did that by the end of my senior year. If my counselor had not taken it upon herself to go talk to my teachers in school and say, hey, this kid's got opportunities, she effectively arranged the whole thing where I would get out of class during the day. They'd send me up over to the library and they'd say, all right, where do you want to apply to school? They'd have me write the essays. I didn't even know back then, I had no idea that you had to pay application fees. She took care of all that on her own, and I got accepted to Notre Dame and Stanford and chose Notre Dame. And it changed my stars. And so I'm thankful for that. I got a degree in business and technology, and then started my consulting career down in Silicon Valley. Married my high school sweetheart, and eventually we moved back up here. And I got to tell you, I was a very, very strong liberal when I moved back. I grew up believing that the reason I was poor was because Ronald Reagan was taken from the poor and given to the rich. I voted for Al Gore over George Bush, and in between those 4 years, between when Bush ran against Gore and then Bush ran against Kerry, I had a number of major changes in my life. The most stark realization I had was when I moved back here from Silicon Valley. Eventually my wife and I settled in Gig Harbor. We've lived there ever since. I went back into the Hilltop and Shalishan areas, the poor areas of Tacoma, and all of my friends were still poor. All the friends that I grew up with were now themselves on public welfare and public subsidies. And I started looking at that and I started asking some questions. Well, wait a second, there hasn't been a Republican elected in Tacoma in like 50 years. I thought that they cared about why hasn't something been done? Interestingly, at the same time, faith became much more important to me. I got baptized in the Holy Spirit, and all of a sudden things like being pro-life mattered to me, standing up for life. At the same time, I started my own business and started realizing that on the other side of the equation, they're making it extremely hard for a guy that's busted his tail, that wants to make sure that his kids never know what it's like to lay their head down at night wondering when they're going to get their next meal, or will they have a roof over their head tomorrow night. I didn't want my kids to ever know those concerns. And so here I am fighting to make sure I've now risen to the point where I can take care of my family, but what about securing that platform so my family and my kids never have to dip back down into poverty? All of these things became very, very important to me, and then my wife and I bought our first house. I had to learn what escrow was. When you come out of generational poverty, things that we take for granted, that we teach our kids about, I had no clue how these things worked. And as I started to understand, okay, there's taxes on property. You don't know that if you grow up on welfare, on public subsidies in Section 8. You don't know that if you're renting your whole life. Those aren't lessons my mom could pass down to me. All of those things kind of came together at one point in time, and I just started looking at this, and I started to dive in, and I started searching for the truth. And that truth led me to one fundamental principle, and that is that the Democrat Party does not care about the low-income person. They do not care about it. Because my friends are still poor, and they're set in a scenario where, as long as they continue to take government subsidies, they will only ever get a handout, not a hand up. Because the moment you start to stand up, all my friends know the gambit. You can work under the table maybe, but if you start making too much money, if you start doing too good, they're going to pull your subsidy. There's no hand up. There's no, hey, let's launch you into a platform of self-sufficiency so that you can then change the stars for your family. That bothered me. And so I quickly became a very, very strong conservative. They don't like me in Olympia because of that history. So when we get on the floor and we're starting to debate policy, they can't say that I don't support, as a Republican, low-income people. Because I voted for those things. That's why my record's bipartisan. I voted for over $1 billion to deal with the homelessness crisis. And you want to know what's happened with that billions of dollars? The problem's only gotten worse. Why has it gotten worse? Because they put no financial restraints or metrics on performance of that $1 million. If you go right now and you look at where that $1 billion has been spent over the last 10 years, what you'll see is that the average cost to build a home like one of these ones I can see through the trees over here, the average cost of a home is about $130 a square foot. But the builders that are getting rich off of these low-income projects are charging the state over $600 a square foot. $600. Then you start digging into the details like, oh my gosh, we're giving this money through local grants where cities and municipalities, your counties, can give tax incentives. And here's what they do. They'll say, hey, you can build a low-income apartment complex provided, and we'll give you the subsidies, we'll give you builders the tax breaks, provided that just 10 to 25% of it is for low income. Which means that they can charge that $600 a square foot, get reimbursed, get their tax incentives, but 3/4 or 90% of the property isn't low income, but they still get the benefit of the low income dollar. Then we start to wonder why our dollars aren't actually fixing the problem. Those are the things that need to change. Those are the things that drive me crazy as a conservative. We need fiscal responsibility. And fiscal responsibility is not an extremist viewpoint to say that I don't want to spend to make the problem go away. I want to spend, but I think that your tax dollars should actually be spent in a wise way that we actually solve the problem and actually start producing a system that helps people rise up out of poverty instead of keeping them an arm's length away. Interestingly, in the areas that I grew up in Tacoma, the elementary schools that I went to in the low-income areas have not once ever been upgraded. Yet if you go into the wealthy areas in Tacoma, those schools have been upgraded twice. Millions and millions of dollars are being ferreted in ways that keep the low-income impoverished, and yet the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That's not the Republicans doing that. That's the Democrat Party. So I've now had to watch my senator come in and support those same types of tax policies. I got $1 million for a exit and an off-ramp reconstruction that is statistically the third most dangerous project, or on-ramp and off-ramp in the state. It's the Willachet on-ramp and on-ramp there in Gig Harbor. I served as chair of the, or not chair, excuse me, I served as one of the budget writers on the transportation committee for a number of years. One of the cookies you get out of the cookie jar, if you're writing the budget, that's yeoman's work, right? You basically spend months in the basement of the Capitol hashing out these budgets. You don't pop your head up. When you're writing budgets, you don't have a lot of extra spare time. So one of the cookies you get is you get a little extra cookie out of the cookie jar and you get a project. So my project was that. In Senator Randall's first year as a senator, with 2 days left to go in session, she used her majority status to take that cookie that was dedicated for public safety, in this case on the transportation arena, and what she did was she took it and gave it to Mayor Wheeler here in Bremerton for the Warren Avenue Bridge. How many of you know that the Warren Avenue Bridge is going to go from 4 lanes to 2 lanes? She took that $1 million and she gave it to Mayor Wheeler so that they could reduce that Warren Avenue Bridge to 2 lanes and use the extra space for bicycle pathways.
Do you know how many crashes that's going to make going to the college?
Yeah, it's going to cause a lot of crashes. You know what else it's going to do? It's going to back up traffic.
Yes, it
a lot.
Backs up.
And that's the type of stuff that the majority party is getting away with, and they're hurting our local communities. In the same time that I've been serving as your representative, I have the highest slate of bipartisanly sponsored or co-sponsored bills in the state, which means that when I write my bills, Democrats co-sponsor them. When it comes to dealing with the mental health care crisis, I have single-handedly written a bill that has had more Democrats sign it, unanimously passed this year as a minority member, that has revolutionized the way that we can deliver mental health dollars in rural counties like Kitsap County. Senator Randall voted for it, all the Democrats voted for it, because I actually dig into budgets for you. Found a way that we could incentivize the delivery of mental health in this arena so that the money wasn't just getting ferreted away into King County and Seattle. At the same time, I have another bipartisan bill co-sponsored by Democrats. And this one dealt with health care delivery and extending greater options to our veteran community. Again, sponsored. And yet they say that minority members can't get bills passed. I'm proud of my bipartisan record for you. And so if you've been paying attention at all, in the primary election, here's what you would have saw in the 26th district. Representative Young is an extremist. Representative Young hates women. I just told you that I'm pro-life. Many of you might be pro-life in here, but does that make me an extremist? Because to Senator Randall, that apparently makes me extremist. Yet here I am with a statistically the most bipartisan voting record. I'm at 85%. The average representative is at 98%. Emily Randall's at 99% party line vote. I think that's extreme. At the same time that Senator Randall says that I'm attacking women, did you know that she sponsored a bill that the Democrat Party itself scuttled and killed? You want to know what the bill does? The bill goes in and attacks the very definition of women by changing references to the word woman to change it to birthing individual. In state law, she doesn't even want the word woman there anymore. That's a radical agenda, folks. My wife is offended by that. My staff is offended by that. Every woman that I've talked to about it on the doorsteps is offended by that type of radical agenda. At what point are we going to say that just because we might agree or disagree on a couple of issues like pro-life or pro-choice, that doesn't mean that we can't have bipartisan focus on our budgets, bipartisan expectations of deliverables for the problems that really affect this state? So, in the Senate right now, we are 4 votes down. This is the #1 targeted race in the state to flip. In the primary election, she's at 51.5% and I'm 48.5%, so I'm a 1.5 down. That's where I sit. Every election except for 2020, I have been below 50% in the primary and come back and won by upwards of 14 points. So flipping this isn't a hard deal for me. It's been my life the entire time. If you might remember, I told you I've been the most heavily spent against candidate in the state. Believe it or not, look around. This isn't the biggest crowd in the world. Welcome to what politics is like. These types of crowds have helped me raise over $500,000 in my campaign so far. And so we expect that we're going to get up to close to $1 million. And so tonight, Christine and the 19th hole decided to stand up for me, a little bit outside of our district, but to give you a chance to get to know me and know what I'm going to do to stand up for you. Here's my question. If they'll call me an extremist, what are they going to call you if I'm gone? What are they going to call you? Because theoretically, just if I'm pro-life and that makes me an extremist, that means about half of our nation is extremist. At what point, a major, who was it? It was a former leader of the CIA, I believe, just came out yesterday and stated that he felt that the Republican Party now was nihilistic and domestic terrorist affiliated. That scares me, because what they're doing is they're effectively trying to gaslight and divide our nation. We have to come together. We can agree to disagree on some of these issues and still attempt. The better nature of human society should be that we should focus on where we agree and try to find common ground and go make lives better for people. That's what public service should be about. When I first came into the legislature, I would say about 80% of the Democrats that were elected extended to me an opportunity to go have lunch with them. Hey, we see that you're brand new. Hey, we're probably not going to agree on a lot, but I see that you do. Hey, why don't you come out and have lunch with me? Hey, let's have dinner. Let's get to know each other and see where we can work together. I very much appreciated that. That was a nice gesture of bipartisanship. Let's see how we can work together. I'd say about 75 to 80% of the Democrat Party did that. I have attempted to extend that same offer now that I'm one of the more senior members in the legislature. And what I have found that as the Democrat Party has turned over, and believe it or not, at the state party or at the state level, turnover happens quite a bit. 9 years, I think I'm the 9th most senior in the House Republican caucus. In just 9 years, I'm the 9th most senior out of 100 members. Effectively about 98 members to be correct. Okay, so now out of that, I have attempted to extend that same offer to the new Democrats that are coming in, replacing those that retire or are unelected or move on to some other pastures. And by and large, I am met with an absolute no. Why would I want to meet with a racist? That's been the #1 critique. How am I a racist? Do you know that I have a mixed race family? That is scary that the left, especially the ones out of Seattle, are coming in so indoctrinated that they're saying, how are we supposed to work together? Most of those members don't even know that I've voted with them. In the last 30 years, there has only been one occurrence where a minority party member has served as the 50th vote. Does anybody know what that means? it takes 50 votes to pass a bill off the floor of the House. And only once in 30 years, when the majority party failed to have the 50 votes out of their own caucus to pass a bill, there has only been one time where a Republican has crossed the lines to pass a bill. I made a promise to my district that I would stand up and support the homeless community and the low income. And that bill had to deal with Section 8 funding to make sure that low income people had a home over their head, and especially when it deals with children. I was that 50th vote. And most of these new crop of members don't even care to look at that to see that, hey, maybe we can work together with Representative Young. Well, Senator Randall has been an extension of that, and that's why I've chosen to run against her. We need to restore a voice of reason into the Senate. And I've chosen, by all accounts, if I had chosen to stay in my House seat, I would have a cakewalk back to re-election. In this election cycle, I'd probably be sitting at about 55%. It's rare in state politics that you see an incumbent versus going an incumbent. But the future of my kids, and to be quite frank, the future of your kids or your grandkids, is too important to me. I'm willing to take the risk my seat, and step up and challenge Senator Randall, because I have a vision that says there can be a bipartisan way that we can tackle these problems and make sure that our kids have a future. So that's why I'm running for Senate. That's why I put myself up there. I'm very appreciative, Christine, that you and the 19th hole agreed to put this on. And at that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
What did you say the Senate split is at 54-46 right now?
The Senate split is 28 to 21, which means that if you subtract 4 of their members and add 4 of ours, we'd be in the majority, 25 to 24. And so this seat is extremely important, because taking it back, there are 3 moderates. There's only 3 moderates left in the Senate caucus. They used to have 4 moderates that would join with the Republicans on some common sense legislation, but one of them is out now, so he's running for Secretary of State. So there's 3 left. So taking the seat back could still give us some say. If we do end up experiencing a Republican wave this year, it doesn't look like it's going to wash over Washington State. But if we did pick up a couple more seats, then we very likely could have 1 or 2 Democrats join with us in a coalition to take back the majority in the Senate. That's another reason why I chose to run. Yeah. Do you have a question? You were pointing to somebody, Christine.
Right back, Carl had a question.
Oh, Carl, do you have a question?
What can we do? What can we do, this group of people, to help with that red wave? Is there anything, the biggest bang for our buck?
The biggest bang for your buck. Right now, I just finished my budgeting for the general election, and the core elements are about 80% paid for. The mail that I need to do, the TV that I need to do. Now we're getting into the ancillary stuff, and that's where I've got variables where we need to raise more money to do it. And in that take, part of our effort will be the texting GOTV. Who in here knows what GOTV stands for?
Get out the vote.
Get out the vote, that's right. So the get out the vote effort in the primary is pretty weak. So one of the programs we've got about, our budget would say we want to spend about $15,000 that I currently don't have the money to budget for. You know, mailers first, TV second, digital. So we estimate that we want to spend, as my campaign, we want to spend about $15,000. What we would do, so you can help with that tonight by writing a check, but in addition to that, the way we spend that is we have applications that if you come and volunteer in my office, or you can do it at home, we can give you an account where we will buy the service, and all you got to do is click on a little button on your computer. You can log in. It is immensely more expensive if I use an automated machine to send text messages. But if somebody sits on an account and it goes text, 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 that costs, I can get them down to about 9 cents a text. And all the technology is taken care of. I just need volunteers that are willing to sit there for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And all right, so then we've got a sign-up sheet in the back. We want you. Yeah, seriously. You don't want me doing that. You want me coming to doing more events like this or knocking on doors, right? So we need volunteers to do that. We also need volunteers. If you want, I'll tell you what. If you don't think that you are door knocking material, come out with me. Watch me go do a little. Hey, how many of you would like to see me do a little song and dance right now? Well, you can see me do it at the doorstep every day. I mean, you were out with us 2 days ago knocking on doors with us. You were shadowing my campaign manager. And but if you want to come right now, we're actually in the Bremerton area, and then we're going to be moving to Port Orchard and a couple of other places. But if you'd like to see how we do that, come out with me. And if you don't like it, then don't come. But at least I'll take care of the door, and you can see how I do it. But we could always use more door knockers, because up until about the first week of October, we are all in persuasion mode. I am out knocking on doors. We are hitting swing. We are hitting some soft Democrat swing voters, and then soft R's, and we're making sure two things. If you're in Bremerton and you are a soft Democrat, in other words, we believe and we've identified you as maybe being a Norm Dick supporter. How many of you think that those traditional Democrats in Bremerton, your Navy Norm Dicks, support the military JFK style Democrats? How many of you think that those people actually know what the Democrat platform is now coming out of Seattle? They don't know. And when you start to educate them, they start coming our way real quick. So we're in persuasion mode in some of these areas and letting them know. The second, yeah.
So what do you think is, talking about those people, what do you think is Emily Randall's greatest vulnerability? If we had something to say to a coworker or a friend, what would be the number one thing you think would resonate with them about her voting record or her stance on the issues?
Emily Randall lied to us. Emily Randall told us that she literally told us that she would support public safety. She said that I have the backs of police officers. This year, in this session, last year, they took away the right for police to pursue criminals. You know that. Right now, people that are fleeing cops and just driving away is up 800%. The word is starting to get out. Honestly, if you pulled out of here right now and a cop pulled you over, if you just continued to drive, they'd have to stop and leave you alone. You literally can drive away and they can't stop you, because they are not allowed to pursue you, because the Democrats have gotten into this stupid notion that if a cop pursues somebody, some kid's going to get run over. You know what's happening with 800% increase in people fleeing police? More people are getting run over. It's backwards. One second, I'll call you next. And so she told us that. And then this year we had a bill. We had a bill to restore that ability to pursue. Do you want to know who the prime sponsor of that bill was? To restore police pursuit? Check this out, folks. The senator that prime sponsored the bill to restore police pursuit was Emily Randall. She then voted for the bill out of the Senate. The bill then came over to the House. Now I'll tell you how I know what I'm about to tell you. There's a very progressive Seattle Democrat in the House that was so ticked off that the speaker, the Democrat speaker, allowed Senator Randall's bill to come to the floor and be voted off the floor, that she chose not to run for re-election. And then she wrote a manifesto that got posted in some either the Times or the Stranger or something like that in Seattle, and she let the cat out of the bag. The cat out of the bag was that the Democrats had a deal. The Democrats were worried coming into this year that they had so screwed up policing that a number of senators felt vulnerable, that they were going to write the bill to restore the ability, they were going to sponsor the bill, they were going to vote for the bill, and then the House was going to scuttle the bill so that they could say that, look, we voted for it, unfortunately we couldn't get it passed out of the House. This Democrat was in on that plan, and then the speaker got rolled. Enough moderates and the Democrat side partnered with Republicans, and we passed the bill out of the floor. We sent it back to the Senate. So now the Democrats and Senator Randall have a problem, because it's her bill. She's already voted for the bill. There was just a small little word change in the bill, so it goes back to the Senate. And with a week and a half to go, Senator Randall refused to bring the bill up for a vote. It's her bill. At the same time, what you don't know is that every county sheriff, every police chief in the district was sending us massive emails down to Olympia. Please get that bill out. Please get that bill out. Senator Randall was responding to these bills saying, you got it, we're working it, we're working it. On the second to last day of session, Senator Randall refused to bring the bill up again, so they made a parliamentary maneuver, the minority leader did, and made a motion to bring the bill to the floor. And to scuttle that bill, Senator Randall walked off the floor of the Senate. It's on TVW, you can see it. Anybody ever watch Ferris Bueller? Ever remember that scene when they're calling roll in the classroom and the teacher goes, Bueller? That literally is on tape right now. You can watch it. Randall. She walks off the floor and took an unexcused absence. In my 10 years in the legislature, I have never seen a legislator take an unexcused absence. If you can't be on the floor of the House or the Senate because of maybe a medical issue or a family issue, they excuse you. I have never seen someone take an unrecorded or an unexcused absence. She walked off the floor. The bill dies. 3 minutes later, you can see her on TVW back on the floor advocating for another bill. When we needed her most, she walked away. That bill was one vote away. It was her bill. She killed her own bill, and then the Democrats, that were ticked off about it in the House, exposed what happened. It's all online. You can see it in the Times, and listen to the Democrats describe it in their own words. And that's why we don't have the ability to restore, or that's why we don't have the ability to pursue criminals right now. So if a criminal comes and steals your catalytic converter, if the cop doesn't see them do it themselves, if you tell them, hey, I saw that those people in that blue Honda stole that, that's not enough evidentiary evidence for them to pursue. The police officer would have to see them themselves. And if they don't, they can't pursue that criminal. And so right now, crime and car theft in this area right now is up 400% year over year.
Jesse?
Yeah.
Do they know where a lot of her money comes from?
Do you know where most of her money comes from? It doesn't come in district. It comes out of district, out of state, and in Seattle. That's where the majority of her funds come from. If you go look at mine, I have the largest percentage of individual donors in the state. I am one of the top-rated legislators that is anti-corporate. I stand up for you for corporations. As a software engineer, a lot of the stuff that I do for you is not sexy enough to make the nightly news, right? So when I'm debating with corporations about who owns your image, when I'm debating technology issues around biometric identifiers and what rights you have, what are the default rights for access to your data on your cell phone.
Sorry, we're going to start up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
agree with everything you're saying. You got our vote too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
I appreciate that.
There's some support.
Have a good day, guys. That was pretty cool. I mean, I've never had someone start up a bike and tell me I got their vote at the same time, so I'll take the rest. They kept looking back, and it didn't dawn on me that they were trying to get out of here. I kept thinking that maybe they didn't like what I was saying, but so on technology issues, I do a lot of work for you to make sure that you have privacy rights, that you have ownership rights, and that doesn't make me popular with corporations because corporations want to make money off of your image, your name and likeness. And those are things that are still so new in the technology arena that most people don't even know that they're being debated. And so Emily Randall gets a lot of corporate money. She said, and when she ran for election 4 years ago, that she would not take corporate donors. I just got a call from a lobbyist today that said, hey, Senator Randall called me. She's asking for money. Like, didn't she pledge not to do that? But she didn't. And so she gets most of her money from out of district, out of state, and from corporations now.
New York.
New York. She shields a lot of it because what they'll do is the major big corporations that she says she opposes, what they'll do is they'll say, why don't you go give to the Democrat caucus and the Democrat caucus will give it to me so we can kind of wash it that way. It's interesting. Look, as far as I'm concerned, she plays the game just like the best of them. But when it comes to standing up for your public safety rights, when it comes to standing up for your taxes, when it comes to standing up for your values, she does anything but stand up for those. As far as I'm concerned, between the two of us, I'm the voice of reason that wants to stand up for you. Did that answer your question? Yeah. What else you guys want to know?
Well, I just had a comment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we know a very beautiful, strong Christian family whose daughter was run over by a guy that was fleeing. In Tacoma, police weren't there because guess what? They couldn't chase. And this kid was killed, 12-year-old little girl.
Yeah.
Their best friend with her, she was injured, but you know, the trauma that all this, her siblings and parents have gone through the loss of their beautiful 12-year-old daughter. It's
Listen,
unfathomable.
so if you didn't hear the comment, you know, you were talking about someone that was just run over by a fleeing criminal and lost their life. If we hadn't have voted, Senator Randall believes that the default assumption for police is that they're guilty and that they're racist. She sponsored the bill that did that. I believe it's 2154. That's scary. They passed about a half a dozen bills 2 years ago, and all the ones that dealt with CRT, critical race theory, and mandating that be taught, and presuming the guilt of police that they're systemically racist. She sponsored every one of those bills. That's a very, very dangerous sentiment to lead with. I am a leading advocate for transparency and accountability, but it is fundamentally against the grain of our democratic republic to presume the guilt of somebody, even the police. And Senator Randall doesn't seem to care that the precedent that she's setting could someday be used to hurt the very people she claims to support the most. Because that's what history has shown us. The best document and the best defense that we've ever had to make sure that someone's liberty wasn't infringed was our constitutional, our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution in the United States. The individual is the smallest minority, and we need to stand up for individual rights. And there's a reason why the United States is the greatest nation on this earth, and why more people have risen out of poverty as a result of this experiment than any other experiment ever tried in the history of this world. And to throw those principles, in this case due process, the presumption of innocence, out the window because it's politically convenient, has only shown that it ends up hurting the very people that pass it. And I believe that we should stand up for those rights. And unfortunately, the rhetoric now is that if you choose to take that stand, you're going to get about $1 million spent against you saying that you're an extremist. That scares me because, again, I'll come back. If they're going to say that about me, what are they going to say about you if I'm no longer on the front lines taking the heat for you? So, yeah?
How do you feel about the IRS having weapons go out? I mean, 87,000. I mean, I've seen videos of these people. I worked security at Bangor a long time ago, and I went through their training and everything, and it was hard. It was really hard. And I'm looking at these guys doing these trainings, and I'm laughing. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
It looks like a joke. I mean, I don't understand how you give them a gun to come into my house over, maybe it's $800. I don't know.
I believe that, well, first off, the question was, what do I think about the IRS being armed and having armed agents? I don't believe that any federal institution, any federal agency other than the military should be armed, period. The truth is, local policing and law enforcement was always reserved for the states. And then the states, through their own state constitution, would then implement the type of policing that they wanted at a local level. And in this case, if the IRS believes that you should be prosecuted or believes that you, in some way, shape, or form, should are breaking the law, then they should make their case to the local authorities and then work with them to do it. That's the way that our constitutional republic is formed, and that edifies and supports the 10th Amendment of our Constitution. Any federal agency that is armed like that, I believe, should be disarmed, and I would advocate that all the armament that they have should be put on the free market so that individuals can go buy them. That's what I believe. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it's just scary when I see these guys doing their training programs, and they're putting it on.
What are you going to do?
Just
Think about the absurdity of this. Right now, the argument is being made that we need to fundamentally defund and then reformulate our policing. Why? Because police aren't skilled with the mental health crisis. Do you think that they're training these IRS agents on mental health crises too? What are you going to do? You're going to send an armed agent that has a fraction of the detail on even how to handle a weapon properly, and you're going to send them to somebody's door that is deficient on their taxes according to your definition. You're not going to work with local law enforcement, and then you're going to show up, well, if that person's suffering a mental health crisis. What are you going to do then when something, you're going to see a massive pushback on this, And what you're going to see, I fear, is you're going to see an increase in vigilantism.
So what happens when these IRS guys show up at a house and try to take them down? And this is a veteran that knows, he's been trained, he knows how to kill.
Well,
What's going to happen?
you're expressing a major concern that is being, the jurisprudence that goes through these types of laws, okay, is why you have a legislative debating process and why it sometimes takes forever. That debative process, deliberative process, is supposed to take a long time to ferret those concerns out. What are you going to do? I'll take it one step further. What are you going to do when your constitutional sheriffs choose, if an IRS agent showed up to someone's house without a search warrant, but says that they have federal authority that is dubious at best to come in and seize or claim you, you're going to see someone hold up or they're going to pull out their weapon and shoot somebody. That's a real concern that's not being adjudicated right now because you're seeing it happen through executive fiat. Where in the Constitution does it give the right for federal agents to be armed? It does not give them that right. Next, if there is some statute misinterpreted or directly interpreted out of the congressional body that says that the IRS deserves or has the right to be armed, that's never been challenged in the courts. Look, when COVID happened 2.5 years ago, and they started to force us in masks, and they started to force vaccinations on people under threat of firing, we're seeing that come through the courts now. Every case that's making its way to the Supreme Court or the appellate court level or the state Supreme Court level is failing because they did not have a constitutional right to do that. So what are you going to do when sheriffs start standing up against IRS agents? You're going to have local police standing against federal police. You're going to see more Bundy standoffs. None of this has been adjudicated. It's very, very scary. And if Biden cared about the rule of law, he wouldn't be forcing it on people. And I think you're right to be concerned.
I agree.
Thank you. Look, you guys, yeah, go ahead.
So, you said a lot of positive things about your record and stuff before, and that's all really great. Emily Randall has a lot of literature out there that paints a very bad picture. Are you going to put out some stuff that endorses your positive points that you just brought forward? Because right now, the only thing that I see is from her is, you're like the scum of the earth or something.
So yes, the primary was very frustrating for me, and I'll tell you why. But I'm very encouraged with what happened in the primary. Imagine that how many people can deal with if I use a football analogy? We're okay with that? Most of you guys get it? Okay. Imagine you're playing the Patriots, and they're expected to be a tough opponent, yes? And in the first half, you have 3 fumbles and 2 interceptions. But you find yourself at halftime only down 7. That's effectively where this race is right now. And the reason why is because, generally speaking, Senator Randall does not have a record at all to run on. She does not want to run on anything about inflation, taxes, crime, public safety, homelessness crisis that has just ballooned under her policies. She doesn't want to run on any of them. What she wants to do is focus on side things, and one of those side things would be to say, if I as a male chose to go negative against Senator Randall, you would see items come up from her saying I'm trying to beat up a woman. She wants that narrative. We understand that. That's the gambit that I'm under. So I chose to go positive in the primary, and I was guaranteed and told that others would take care of exposing her and the negatives. And unfortunately, that did not happen in the primary. The reason why that didn't happen in the primary is because the Republican Party was so convinced that a red wave was coming that they spent a majority of their money on long shot odds for races in King County. And as a result of that, my race was taken for granted. Jesse's got this. In the 2018 election, I actually beat Senator Randall by over 1,000 votes. Same voting base, different race, but same exact voter demographic. They elected me by over 1,000 votes more than they did her. So the people that said that they were going to take care of that didn't, but they never bothered to tell me that they had changed their mind and were going with a different strategy. I will not make that same mistake in the general election. Senator Randall will be exposed for her voting record, and she will have to answer for that. And I'm hopeful, and I've been told that there are a number of people that will spend in that arena, and if they don't, hopefully, I gotta be careful with how far I go on this, because our election laws in the state are really complex. But your frustration has not gone unnoticed. It is something that I'm very aware of, and the same scenario will not play out in the general election. And given all those missteps, I'm still only down to touchdown. So in the second half, I will come back. And again, I'll tell you, I have moved the needle about 7 times more in previous elections than I need to now to still win. So that won't, her record will be exposed. She is a very radical, progressive Seattle Democrat, and she does not align with the values of this district.
Yeah, and besides pointing out her radicalness, all the positive stuff that you brought forward at the beginning of this, that really needs to be put out so she can't argue back against that. At least that's what I feel, because there's a lot of positive stuff that you've done, and shows that you can reach across the aisle and stuff, but that's lost in all the negative stuff.
Look, you want here, I'll tell you a couple things. You want to see some comparisons? I have saved this district more money than every elected Democrat in this local region the last 20 years combined. With the deal that I did, the impossible deal that they said you could not refinance at Tacoma Nails Bridge, the refinancing package that I did, while not sexy, saved this district collectively over $200 million, or the entire Kitsap Peninsula over $200 million. This year, Senator Randall claims that she's voted and passed a bill to lower the tolls on the bridge. Ask her where the money is. She didn't get the money. She got a promise that the money would come, but the bill that she got the promise in order to get the promise, by the way, keep in mind that promise is not binding. You cannot, by state law or by our Constitution, bind a future legislature, because it would effectively be binding you. So she got a promise. It won't come. Conveniently, in the bill that she passed to say that she's going to lower tolls, she removed the provision that I got passed in 2018 that put a cap on the tolls. It's an interesting question. If your goal is to lower the tolls, why would you remove the cap that prevents them being raised? That's what she did. Horrible negotiation. At the same time, in order to get that bill, if you have been paying attention over the last year to the Kitsap Sun and what they've been writing about with the fixes that we've been working on for Gorst, we had a informal understanding up and down the legislative level that includes Derek Kilmer, down to the legislature here that I'm serving in, that Emily serves in, down to the cities, down to the counties, down to the ports. Everybody had been working on Gorst. We had a provisional deal in place for $450 million to fix Gorst. $450 million coming into this budget writing session. But when Senator Randall came out and said psych, and took that out and said that's no longer my #1 priority, I want to lower the tolls on the bridge, that gutted the entire 2.5 years of bipartisan work for Gorst. So instead, because she focused instead on the Narrows Bridge, all we were able to get, now she's out here championing to you that she got $75 million to fix Gorst. Here's what that $75 million buys you. It buys you 16 years of study. That's it. Go look at the bill. The $75 million will be spent over 16 years to study the Gorst problem. We already know what the solution is to Gorst. She got $75 million to give to builders that end up donating back to the Democrat Party, these big corporations, to study the problem. Put me in the Senate and I'll get Gorst fixed. That's a guarantee. And I've kept every one of my promises. So those are big comparisons. If you want to help me get those out, well then, like I said, you can help me text, you can help me door knock, and if you don't want to do that, when Marcus comes up to ask you for money, if you give me that money, I'll go make sure that the voters know this, and I think that they'll vote heavily for Representative Young to be the next senator. Yeah.
What is your solution for Gorst?
We need a bypass. Their solution was to put a viaduct in. You know, very similar to the one they just tore down in Seattle. They want to put a viaduct in around the whole thing. We need a bypass. Everybody knows we need a bypass. You need tribal buy-in. The last time they tried to do a bridge bypass was about 25 years ago, and the local tribal community was not worked with, and they have fishing rights to the waters, and so they were concerned with that, and so it scuttled it. And if you are familiar, a number of years ago, back in 2015, I had a bypass solution that was going to bring a lot of federal dollars in. So the solution is to tie it into federal dollars on a bypass that will connect. If you, the real solution would be if you can picture as you're driving into Gorst coming north on 16, right when the road curves left, it goes down into Gorst. If you go look at the land that's available, if you went straight off of there, you would land, you could build a bridge across into where Highway 3 and Highway 303 connect, right around where the sewer system is, the sewer plant is there, and you could do a bypass. If you build a bypass and a bridge over there, you reinvigorate and reinstantiate the current infrastructure at the Gorst level. The amount of infrastructure that we have there would be viable for another 50 years without needing expansion, because you'd be taking so much traffic off of there through the bypass that it could easily accommodate the traffic flow. The next thing that you need to do is something I'm already working on. How many of you are familiar with the Belfair bypass? So we have a Belfair bypass coming through that will bypass Belfair on Highway 3. The largest opportunity for growth, high-tech sector growth, agricultural and transportation and shipping growth, is in what is formerly referred to as the South Kitsap Industrial Area. But it's basically between Gorst and the Kitsap Airport. That whole area is where we've slated for future growth. Amazon wants to build another plant out there for shipping and stuff. We could have massive, massive job growth. Here's the problem. If they build that, how do you get any of the infrastructure that's built there, any of the transportation needs that would accommodate that, can they go south on Highway 3? No, the only way off of that is to come through Gorst again. Well, so what we need is we need another bypass off of that. So we bypass with the bridge, and then what we do is we would tie in through the Belfair bypass that's coming south of the airport back into Highway 16. I would advocate through the either 144th corridor or the Pine Street corridor, between the two. We do that, and then you give additional relief through Gorst by providing another bypass off of the peninsula back into Highway 16. But again, I've been serving you on transportation for almost 10 years now, and those are real solutions that we can get done, and I don't need to raise your taxes to do it. So that's how I'd solve those problems. Anybody else want to ask me a finance question? I can bore you, but I'll give you the details. Look, folks, there are not a lot of people in Olympia that are prepared or that have the ability to step away in the prime of their career while they've still got maybe gas left in the tank and take on a part-time job at the legislature. Imagine the scenario that the average person has in that scenario. I have to go to a boss and say, hey, I want this title, I want this job, and I want this pay, but by the way, I need 3 to 5 months off every year. That's not a scenario that most people can afford to do. As a person that owns his own consulting business, I've been in that position to do that. And my statement to the district is, I'm willing to lend that skill set to you if you have me. If not, then I'll go back and I'll take care of my kids. But that's the solution I bring to you. Very few people know how to write the budgets down in Olympia. I'm one of the few. I'm one of 8 legislators that serves you full-time on the tax structure work group. There are only 8 of us, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Not one of the ones that was nominated by my peers to do that. I serve on the finance committees. We help write these budgets. So yeah, I'm prepared to go do that for you guys. Any other questions? Sure. Well, then I think you want me to thank you very much. Marcus Carter is a local community leader, strong supporter of your Second Amendment rights. Has got a few words to share with you. Thank you.
My name is Marcus Carter. I've been the executive officer of Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club. I've also been the president of the Puget Sound Patriots, which was the Kitsap Patriots Tea Party, a Tea Party group formed a number of years ago so that we can make the changes we need to in Washington State. 901. Anybody know what that stands for?
Inslee's been in power.
The number of days that Inslee has claimed emergency powers and has tried to take it out of the hands of the legislature and people like Jesse Young that are supposed to be running our government. We need to get Jesse Young into office. I've known Jesse for a long time. He is one of the only people that I have ever met that if that man gives me his word, it's gold. I can walk away. And that's what we want in our legislators. I don't want to have to babysit people or babysit the people we appoint to, whether it's our Senate, the House of Representatives, or County Commissioner. I don't want to have to babysit them. I want to elect them to office and know that they are going to do the job that they tell us they're going to do. Jesse Young has been that man. Anytime that man has given me his word, it has been absolutely solid. Jesse's not perfect. Shock to many. He's not perfect. But doggone it, he's close. Because I know where his compass lies. You see what they just did in Wyoming? Folks, don't let them fool you. It can happen here. And it needs to happen now. Some of us have been involved in politics for a long time. I ran for county commissioner in the south end of this county a couple of times. I know what it's like. I know Jesse's exhausted. I know Josh is in here. I'm getting ready to talk with him here in a little bit. I know he has to be. It is a lot of work to run for office. But as he got up here, did he seem to stumble over anything anybody asked him? He's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. He knows his stuff. He doesn't play any games. And that's what we need as our senator in the 26th district. So folks, we need you to break out everything you have. I've always felt, as much as your money, I want your blood, sweat, and tears. But folks, we need both to win this race. We need both right now for Jesse Young. Emily Randall has been a disgrace.
Yes.
We don't need slimy Seattle or Manhattan and New York funding and running our county and our 26th district or our state. It is time that we break everything loose that we can. We don't have a lot of time, folks. Someone mentioned the 87,000 IRS agents. What this state has done in trying to break people down. I got injured in a job in February. I just got approval and approval for surgery to happen in September. Because of government bureaucracy and wasted money. They want people to be reliant upon the government. Jesse Young is one of those that will help us find our own way. He knows that we as individuals are the ones that need to be running this state, and when it comes to governmental issues, that we can rest at peace knowing that Jesse's got our back. There are a lot of folks that have gone on for a long time and have given us lip service. Emily Randall has been one of those. I still get, although I specifically have her go to the junk folder, but I still read it before it goes, I get her emails. You cannot trust that lady. You cannot trust anything that she says or anything she's done. She's beholden to other people. Jesse Young is one of the only people that I know that even when it wasn't popular, he stood up for what's right. I couldn't be prouder and more honored to stand here and beg you to part with your hard-earned money and your time and your energy to see to it that that man holds that Senate seat in the 26th district here very shortly. I really don't know what else to say. As I listen to Jesse up here, he is so clear-minded. He knows his focus. And I know he'd much rather spend his time with his beautiful bride and his beautiful family rather than deal with the politics and the headache that Olympia throws at him. But folks, he's willing to stand that ground. And we need to support him. And we need each one of you to support him beyond anything you ever have. I've increased my giving to Jesse by almost 100%, and I'm going to do everything I can even beyond that. I'm going to do everything I can to see to it he gets into office. I don't have a lot of time, a ton of resources, but I have a conviction that this state is not lost. It is not too late. My oldest daughter, her husband, and their family moved to Florida because they actually have a decent governor. We only get DeSantis to move here. Or get Jesse to run for governor.
Yay.
That may come. That may come. There are a lot of people that I have loved dearly that have given of their heart and their soul, and they've been so beat down that they've had to move out of the state. They said they can't take it anymore. But folks, I still have at least 6 grandchildren living right here in South Kitsap County. And this is where I take my stand. This is going to follow you no matter where you go. It will come after you. So we must take our stand, and we must take our stand now. So I'm asking every one of you to give till it hurts. Because I'm telling you what, it's unthinkable that we go on one more session with the leadership that we've seen. Emily Randall gets most of her money from Seattle. I got a nice letter, I got a nice email from her. She was in Manhattan and New York for a fundraiser to be your senator. Who do you think she's going to be beholding to? And she has shown it. That man right there is beholding to you. And before all of that, he has made it very clear, and I've seen it, that he's beholding to the Almighty before any of that. That I trust. So I'm asking you right now to do everything you can. I'm begging you on behalf of all of my grandchildren that you support that man and see to it that he gets in that office. We need it in the worst way. There are envelopes right over here. If you haven't filled out one yet, please pass them around. Take the time right now. You fill them out. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't think about what you can do later. Gee, I'll think about what I can, look at my bank account. We need him in office, and it needs to be local. We have someone that's willing to work for us. I've asked Emily Randall to talk to me. Crickets. She has no interest in anything that I would have to say. Jesse Young not only is interested in what I have to say, but he listens. And the things that he's put to work have been wonderful. I've not agreed with him every time, without question. But guess what? Again, he's not perfect, but we don't have Jesus here running for office. But somebody that honors him and knows his position and knows the duty of those that have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution. What is the purpose of the Washington State government? Can someone tell me what our purpose is according to the Washington State Constitution?
Toward individual rights.
Article 1, Section 1 of the State Constitution says, all political power, I used to have this down pat, is inherent in the people, and governments derive their just power from the consent of the governed, and is established to, what's our government established to do? Protect and maintain individual rights. Not minority rights, not some special interest rights, your rights. I personally stood in front of judges and I told them, Your Honor, your oath was to uphold individual rights, and I'm the only individual standing before you today. And being the good Democrat he was, he said, well, that's individual in a collective sense. Folks, we are close. We are on the tipping point of going under. We truly are. So now is the time to pull out all the stops. Candidates hate to ask for money. I know what that's like. I had to have somebody else ask for it. But the reality is, It takes money, and it takes time, and it takes energy. How many here are willing right now to say, I will help Jesse Young get into office? Financially, how many here are willing to give to Jesse Young to get into office? That's awesome. How many here are willing to give of their blood, sweat, and tears to get Jesse into office? I like how you laid that off. Are you Democrat? I'm sorry. Now, folks,
a lot of money.
there is a rich heritage within the Republican Party. The Republican Party was about protecting individuals and their rights. That's what it was formed for. Whether it was protecting slaves that were getting freed, or folks as they went along throughout life, it was about giving people the power to live their life. Jesse Young is one of those that I have seen him work. He calls me, and or I call him, and I get an answer back. You don't get that from the other side. So folks, I'm asking you right now, don't leave tonight without making a substantial donation to this campaign. Jesse has, I think it's over $500,000. It's unbelievable what we've seen. We are close. But folks, there's too many low information voters out there that they just have to see the flyers that come in and see who looks pretty as they get them in. You know, it's not about pretty, although Jesse's a handsome guy. It's about taking the time to see to it that the people that are in office get there. And unfortunately, a lot of times the only way to do it is to see to it that they have that thing in front of their face, that mailer in front of their face, and those things aren't cheap. To mail an entire district, what does it take to send a mailer out to the 26th district?
If you want to hit swing voters,
Yes.
and if you want to hit swing voters, about $12,000. Just swing voters. If you want to add
For one mailer.
If you want to add, say, soft Democrats, soft Republicans, and increase your universe, then it goes up. It's close to 20.
Folks, we can do this, and we can do this now. Washington State is not lost. It's not. This is our country, this is our state, and it's time we take it back. So again, I appreciate you all coming. Thank you for your time today. Please, break out your wallet and make it happen.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Now we just have the pleasure, Josh Kidman dropped in on us, and he's here. He's running for county commissioner. So we wanted to introduce Josh.
Well, I won't take a long time, but thank you so much. My name is Josh Inman. I'm running for county commissioner. If you don't know my story, I'm an everyday person. I did big business for a long time, was a foster care director. I just love where I live. I'm raising my kids here. And I realized the community that it's turning into is not the community that I moved to. It's not where I bought a retirement home. It's not why I thought I was going to live here. And so I got fed up enough that my wife said, you can either run for office or we're going to move. And I don't want to move anymore because she said if I moved again, she'd divorce me. And I like being married. So I'm running because I'm fed up, and we have to change it. And I think it starts at the local level. We have to see change from legislative all the way down to the local level. And if we don't start and don't take it back, it's going to turn into Seattle. It's going to turn into communities we don't want to be in. And so I bought the building that lives next door to Walgreens and the old C-Stock where we had the most recent homeless encampment. And so I had people break into our apartments, and they were taking showers in apartments for 22-year-olds. And we bought that apartment complex with a vision to provide affordable housing for young adults in our community, because we have parents who are saying, I want my kid to move out, and we have kids who want to move out, but they can't afford to. And so I went together with a group of business owners in our community. We put a group of 14 people together, and we bought that apartment complex to provide an affordable place for young adults to live and start their lives. And so I'm not a guy who sits around and talks about how do we create a solution, let's get in a think tank, let's get our philosophies on the board. I'm somebody who gets people together, will make decisions, and will get crap done, and that's what we need done in Kitsap County today. And so we've had enough conversations, we've had enough talking, it's time to get things done in our community. Homelessness, affordability, crime, they're through the roof. We're spending more money we've ever spent to solve the problems, and the problems are getting worse. What does that tell you? The party that's in control is not making good decisions. So we need to bring common sense back into government. I can do that. I have a long history of actionable leadership. I decided in the end of April to get involved. I won the primary. I did a good job. Now it's time to win the general. I'm going to need people's help. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me introduce myself.